Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experience. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology who'll be bringing you their perspectives on how digital transformation is reshaping the way we recruit, engage, and graduate learners. You'll hear firsthand accounts of how institutional leaders are developing their strategy, as well as get deeper on the stories of how these EdTech tools are being built to foster better student outcomes. With that, let's get to today's episode. Hey folks, welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 334. Sean Gannon of GTMppl. Excited to have a chance to follow my curiosity and some questions I've been pondering around EdTech funding, EdTech growth, and how companies are kind of navigating the new normal around AI increasingly being a focus of EdTech products for a lot of institutions who don't necessarily have all the money to kind of throw around for every new shiny tool and platform. So Sean helps me to kind of explore all that, some things that are on my mind, and just a really great conversation. Appreciate him coming on and appreciate you listening to this episode at number 334 with Sean Gannon. ASU GSV is always a great time of year. I connect with a lot of great folks at the event, do great interviews, networking, socializing, all that. Sean Gannon, you are one of those folks. We got introduced and we're saying like, hey, maybe we'll be able to do an interview at ASU GSV. But I knew I wanted to make sure that we had an interview. We weren't able to do it there, missing each other, but super grateful for you to be here on the podcast to chat more about your work. If you want to briefly introduce yourself to kick us off, talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk more about what you're doing in the EdTech space currently.
Sure. So Sean Gannon, founder of GTMppl, GTMppl for short. And I've been in EdTech for about 20 years now, which is a little scary for me to say. I've led sales teams at Starfish Retention Solutions, Parchment, Presidium, and decided after Instructure acquired Parchment, I was seeing a real need in the market because I have a theory that sales is changing. What I do is I help folks modernize their GTM options and assist them in modernizing those so that they are the most effective and they're connecting with the right people on campuses. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, we'll definitely talk more about the nuances of your work and just what you're seeing in the landscape, because I feel like you probably just have a very unique kind of point of view, the history of your work, but then also the work you're doing now with a variety of organizations, how they're kind of interacting with institutions and all that. Something that I feel like was maybe a hallmark of years past of all these sort of venture capital, highly valued companies in the EdTech space. There was also the idea of like, you get all this money and resources, you are just like flooding the zone of just trying to just be like almost annoying. Like, people can't not know who you are because you're just everywhere doing everything all at once. And then that idea, of just like part of it would be that you send all those like charismatic sales reps out to all the places and whatever else. And I guess like, all that to be said, it's a lot more sizzle, less steak kind of thing. So I guess if that's part of what you're getting at, I will not want to put any more words in your mouth, but feel free to elaborate on your working theory that you are engaging folks on when it comes to the go-to-market you're working through in the EdTech space.
Yeah. A lot of it is informed by, there's a bunch of research that I posted about, like from Forrester and Gartner and Bain, about how people today are buying. And the stat that stands out to me is that if you are a company and you're not on the list, you're basically 70% likely to lose the deal if you're not on that short list, because the majority of folks aren't getting educated on what your solution can do for them by talking with the sales rep. They're usually talking with the sales rep very late in the cycle. And with generative AI, being able to go out and do research and find different information for your institution of what this solution would do or that solution would do, it makes it very easy for folks to be excluded from the sales process because maybe they haven't optimized their web presence. That information isn't out there. And so the other thing that goes along with a lot of that is a big focus on marketing and air cover and having your data model really well structured in your CRM so that you are touching these individual accounts on a regular basis, that when, hey, we need a LMS solution or we need whatever it may be on campus, an admission solution, that you are one of the vendors that is top of mind. And then that's where sort of the charismatic sales rep can come into play and engage with them, take them through sort of an evaluation process, and then hopefully win that deal or not. But I do think it's becoming more of a data play And I've seen a greater focus at a lot of ed tech companies where they're focusing more on revenue operations, and you're starting to see more of these go to market or GTM roles popping up about like optimizing lead flows, optimizing speed to meeting for a lot of these companies, so that when someone does raise their hand and says, I am interested in whatever you're doing, you're able to optimize that entire flow for them. But if you're selling like it's 2005 and requiring sort of sales reps to engage on that nurturing that happens in the early part of the sales cycle, you are likely to not be successful.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting a finer point on that. I think, yeah, like being smarter, more sophisticated, more kind of effective and efficient, and all those sort of action words there. I think it is refreshing because I think that's I think emblematic maybe of what I've gathered that era of even like in the 1900s of that idea that like people like there's a lot of skepticism of vendors or like kind of scrutiny,
Yes.
or there's ostracized, and people always rolling their eyes and those sort of things because it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, my phone's ringing off the hook with all these people just being like, hey, you're the CTO of some notable institution, like, can I talk to you for a few minutes or whatever? So, and I'm curious, yeah, just anything that you feel like, anything more that you'd want to contextualize when it comes to the ed tech companies, the idea like what forces that are impacting them, because I feel like also that there's like you're enduring a funding winter. I think that's been persisting. There's just not been all that sort of just like free money flowing all over the place that people can like use to do those things. But I'm just curious, any other kind of quick hit kind of contextual factors that have been impacting the way that ed tech companies are going to market?
I'd probably sound cliche saying this because everyone's talking about AI agents and making things more efficient. It does really, I think, level the playing field. Having been at several sort of large entities that are, I equate them to moving an oil tanker and steering an oil tanker versus a speedboat. And I do talk with a lot of ed tech startups that have very limited funding. These are maybe pre-Series A or pre even sort of angel funding. They're really able to compete with the big guys because they're building it from an agentic starting point. Whereas a lot of the bigger guys, their data model isn't clean enough. It's not going to be as really great for you to be able to be as efficient as some of the little guys in being able to connect with a wide variety of folks, utilizing those tools from the foundational level. Whereas if you're a big company, you're going through the whole rigmarole of choosing a vendor, making sure they have a SOC 2, making sure they have an ISO certificate. Even those things are super important for security purposes and infrastructure purposes, but they often, I think, hold larger entities back from being able to compete with those smaller ones.
Yeah, it's a good call out, obviously, because, yeah, the sort of AI of it all is impacting everything. So it bears mentioning here. But because, yeah, I think it's that idea of disruption and all that, where like, it is interesting that I feel like it is perhaps more so from that go-to-market strategy where somebody can come in as a new lean player and like drop in those sort of ripple effects and just rock the boat of this big oil tanker, whatever. They could always benefit and coast and just benefit from like their name recognition and being maybe well regarded. They've been around for a while, they're probably gonna continue to be around for a while and that sort of thing. But yeah, acknowledging that there is a kind of stark contrast there and that it does in some ways benefit the new player and other ways benefit the larger player. So
and I think even the larger players, they clearly have a moat for a reason, but they're defending that moat. And they clearly got big for a reason because a lot of people found value in the solutions that they offered. I just think that they cannot rest on their laurels. They have to be able to continue to innovate. And I'm just seeing this generally across a lot of different markets where AI, there's a bunch of it that's fluff and kind of nonsense and also not secure. You don't want to have an entire student information system that's been vibe coded type of thing. That wouldn't be a feasible offering. I talked with a friend of mine who works for Salesforce. He's a developer there. And one of the things that he talks about and that he just knows really well is he can vibe code all day long, but like when you're vibe coding, you don't realize the security nightmare you're actually creating for whatever it is you're creating because you don't understand how databases work. So I think at the end of the day, that type of interaction is going to continue to happen where someone's going to vibe code using the standard APIs that are available and make something even better than they could buy from you. And they're going to start locking down their systems more from enabling people to do that, which I think would be the mistake, because then that can drain your moat as people look at solutions that are going to play well with a wide variety of different tools.
Yeah, I like that call out too, because I always think about that of people who make an integration into Canvas or something. It's like, what if they just shut off the ability for you to integrate?
Yep.
That's like your whole business model, whatever. But thankfully, I do think, yeah, there is a culture of openness to that, thankfully, where I don't believe that would happen. I do think that is the wrong choice of just being the very closed, restrictive, limited platform, whatever. But yeah, it is just, I think, how innovation persists and continues to happen is, yeah, you get the big player, then you got flank somewhere, somebody comes in, and however it takes shape of, sometimes it is the big players like, all right, you join our team then, and you bring that into our
Yeah.
tool, or they just are able to like eclipse that bigger player because they just lagged or whatever reason, they didn't respond or they weren't proactive. But I'll combine the next two questions of one kind of the higher level again, just what are the dynamics that are impacting institutions, how they're viewing or evaluating tech tools and their sort of mindset right now, because I believe that there is a increased scrutiny in some regards. I think maybe if it's just channeled from a more vague kind of generalized skepticism of vendors, now it's starting to get more precise where institutions are questioning the efficacy of these tools. I'd be like, okay, show me your work, show me what you're doing, how it's positively impacting retention or whatever else, versus it being just, again, that sort of sizzle, hey, just trust me, we're changing the world, we're so great or whatever else. From your perspective, what are those institutional dynamics, and would you maybe describe it as just more precise and increased scrutiny around like efficacy?
The trend that I'm seeing is that if your platform is a nice to have and not a need to have and doesn't have a documented ROI, you're going to be on that short list that the CIO looks at to go, why are we paying these guys $50,000 a year and what do they do? Type of thing. Whereas I think the bigger guys are going to be fine because the student information providers, the LMS providers, those are the ones that are now legacy platforms. They're very hard to rip out. It would be very painful. One of the things that often comes up is I counsel a lot of early stage companies. They're like, okay, we're doing a pilot with this school. Okay, what stats are you collecting? We're not really collecting any stats. Why aren't you collecting stats? In exchange for giving them the solution, whatever your solution does, let's just say it was a retention solution. You should be tracking the type of retention engagements that are happening on there, and then you should record by working with the registrar's office to look at what was your retention rate at the beginning of the year, what was it at the end of the year when you used the platform, when we piloted this for whatever subset of students on campus. As an EdTech company, that provides you with valuable information that you can bring out to the market and kind of get more clients on board. It also provides a ton of value to when it is time to either turn that pilot into full-time engagement where you can go, hey, you know what? We were able to affect your retention rate by 1% over the last 12 months, which equates to X millions of dollars, tuition dollars that you keep on campus. So me asking you to pay for a $50,000 solution, that's the justification. So then if you happen to be on that CIO list of vendors that might get chopped, you at least then have the backup of, here's the effect our platform has. I remember during COVID, which was often a big boom time for a lot of EdTech companies, because everyone's like, oh my God, we got to get online. We got to be able to engage students and we need all these tools and other things like that. Once that money dried up, a lot of those tools that didn't provide the value and a lot of those companies that didn't actually share the value of their platforms with their champions on campus were pushed to the wayside. And so I think it's twofold. Like, you want to be able to get that renewal. You want to be able to get that upsell or cross-sell with many institutions. But if you're not constantly proving the value over and over again of our platform will change your retention rates by X% in 12 months on average, and you're not shouting that from the rooftops, both in your marketing, but also like your CSM motions as they're engaging with the leaders on campus, you are going to be in trouble when it comes time for renewal or when it comes time to kind of cross-sell into another division at that institution.
Yeah, and that is like the big imperative is doing that kind of work early and often, be well prepared for it versus like, oh my God, renewal time's coming up, we gotta scramble and try to scrape together something. And then, yeah, obviously like how that would be done for each EdTech companies, how they partner with institutions, there's going to be a lot of nuances there, and that's for all those folks to figure out. But I think, yeah, that's just general advice of it is time well spent to be doing that work to kind of solidify your spot, both for new prospective customers, like you said, shout that out, and then as you're managing and nurturing a relationship long term. I'm curious though, because I just thought of something else, like kind of institutional buying dynamics, because I know there's certain maybe states with their public institutions or different sort of like consortiums and that sort of thing. Just a quick hit follow up. Has that been like a historic, persistent thing? Has that kind of increased lately in the terms of like how public systems buy or anything else, these sort of organizations that you can kind of get like a stamp of approval for? I know there's just efficiencies that can be gained for like tech companies to kind of interface with these
Yeah.
consortiums. Has that just been like always a thing that I'm just discovering about, or has that kind of increased in popularity, I feel like, for institutions to buy that way?
I think it's become more and more popular. I'll give Parchment as an example since I worked there, but we had an agreement with MEC, the Midwest Higher Education Compact, for a variety of our services that could be acquired via no RFP because they had already vetted us. They're agnostic for the most part, but they get a piece of it as a way to offer it to their member institutions. It has been very popular. Obviously, EdTech companies will take every opportunity they can get. If they can avoid an RFP by having a relationship and giving up 2%, they're certainly going to do that because it's going to just smooth the entry. Higher ed is very much keeping up with the Joneses. If they see a peer institution has had value with your platform, they're going to jump on board with it as well, 100%. But I do think it also is institution specific. As someone who's responded to hundreds of RFPs over the years, it's, oh, we got an RFP. And it's like, okay, drop everything for the next 3 weeks while we figure out and respond to this type of thing. But I understand it is important to the institutions. But a lot of the things with agentic AI now, they've already done a lot of their homework on the vendors that they want to narrow it down to.
Yeah, because I guess like that point of what you're saying before, that's why like the germ kind of got in my head. I want to make sure to ask it briefly. Was like that idea of like institutions having a short list. Part of it may be like a name recognition, the prestige or the reputation of maybe a larger player, or like their who they define or see as their peer institution. So I guess we'll wait and see. But another sort of market dynamic question I wanted to get your take on. I just got clued into this concept through a couple of conversations that I've had recently. The idea of patient capital, being willing to wait long term in terms of funding for startups in this space. Curious for a hot take on that, if you feel like that's going to move ed tech companies into the market in a more positive direction in terms of like they have a more longitudinal view working with this institution that's been around for 200 years kind of thing. Like that's what's on my mind, if that was like a novel concept of going that route versus the sort of inflated valuations and huge funding rounds and the expectations that go along with that. What is your take on patient capital funding in the edtech space?
I like it as an idea generally. Having been a part of companies that were private equity backed is more of a shorter term view of 3 to 5 years where they want to get out there. And the traditional VC model is still 3 to 5 years as well. But PE often comes in and then can change goals. They can change direction. They can change staff internally. And I think it can cause upheaval when so much of selling into higher ed is relationship building. And when you're only focused, say, on that bottom line, which I definitely understand as an investor, you have to be focused on that bottom line. But I like the idea of longer term plays. And I think you're starting to see more, not only just VC firms, but PE firms do longer investment cycles, especially within ed tech, just because it takes so long to mature. And I think that you're going to see more of that because that whole flash in the pan thing, and again, I keep bringing up agentic AI, but I think you're going to see an explosion of these kind of agentic AI solutions in higher ed that are going to be a flash in the pan. And that to me gives me great concerns over patient capital because it's more just like a sugar high type of a thing where maybe it only does one thing and then bolts onto a larger system type of thing. But that I still see that I think there needs to be a little bit of both patient capital and not. I think it really depends. For legacy, like I would say, or infrastructure plays like deep data, compliance, workflows, I think the patient capital is a good type of system if you're a company that's focused there. But for like point solutions, that's where I think you're still going to get the sugar high of, okay, we developed this tool that does one thing and it bolts onto your student information system and helps you identify students that are at risk or whatever it is. That I think does have a good reason to like maybe get an injection of funding and see how far you can take it. And then maybe it gets acquired by a larger company. And that creates, I think, a very vibrant space where Matt Patinsky talks about this a lot, that like you can only, as a large entity, you can only innovate so much. And eventually you do have to acquire in order to innovate and bring not only new people, but new technologies in that enhance the value of your platform. And so I think there's a case for both. But as with most kind of bubbles, type of thing. That'll pop, and then we'll get back to the peas and carrots of EdTech.
Yeah. And you mentioning too the bubble, it's like, I do believe, there's probably a little bit of overinflation. Because like you said, a lot of these companies are going to be kind of the thing of the moment that are like the flash in the pan or whatever, and just maybe get bought out by some of the bigger players, and that's all well and good. I think all good things to acknowledge, and all the kind of complexity and nuances of the context of things for tech companies and institutions alike. So,
and I think, like, to your point on the press releases that you did see, especially during the pandemic, about acquisitions, obviously if it's two private companies, they don't always have to publicize the sort of acquisition numbers. With Parchment getting acquired by Instructure, it was $835 million. They publicized that because they were a public company when they acquired us. I also think there's maybe a little bit of like sociology and psychology here as well. If higher ed as an industry and education in the US is doing well, I think those types of big flashy things, it was just acquired for $1 billion or whatever, it's okay. When funding is drying up with the market that you sell to, I don't think it's a good look necessarily to be like, we just got acquired for $10 million or whatever it is. Like, I don't know that you want to necessarily shout that from the rooftops, like, especially when your core market may be counting pennies in order to afford your solution or whatever it may be, because their funding sources have dried up significantly or gotten a lot tighter.
Sometimes, it's just one of those things of like, you choose how you show up and promote yourself and send out messages and all that. And I don't know. I guess it's just, I'm a very middle of the road kind of guy. There's that irrational optimism kind of thing. It's like, that was a moment. Or just if it's on the other side, I guess it would be that sort of like kind of conflict or antagonism and that sort of thing. But just all these two very different cultures, like they are just clashing and begrudgingly working together or whatever. It's, I think, over time, thankfully, in a variety of ways, my observation is that there is, the institutions see that they need these companies and are much more willing and welcoming to kind of bring them in and kind of interface with them. And then certainly, by the sounds of it, through the work that you are doing, I think you are having an influence, you and others, of helping these ed tech companies be smarter, more effective, more efficient, more surgical at the way that they're reaching out and engaging and doing all that, whatever it is that they're selling and whatever it is they're backing or whatever it might be. So I just appreciate you for hanging out. And we'll close out here, though, just to make sure, however you want to take this, higher ed leaders, at institutions, at tech companies, both, or whatever, advice that you would give to higher ed leaders navigating this moment.
Whether you're on the ed tech side or on the university side, I think patience is number one. There's so much noise right now around different tools, different solutions, agentic AI, how it can interface with your existing platforms. And I think doing your homework, making sure you're doing all the research that you can on solutions, because it is changing so quickly. We did, for example, an AI training at Parchment prior to us being acquired and everything. So about 2 years ago or so. And everything I learned in that is now obsolete. Every single thing. I have done other AI trainings since then, and it is just moving so quickly that it's really hard to, there's a bunch of different tools out there and solutions. And I think it's just take a breath and look deep into, if you're a higher ed administrator, look deep into the company, who they are, what they're representing, what their solution does. Is it something that is going to be here for the long term? Or as we talked about earlier, is it that kind of flash in the pan, sugar high type of solution? Doing your due diligence, I think, is incredibly important. Yeah, that would be my bit of advice, is just take a breath, do your research, and it's important that you don't pick a solution that doesn't work in 6 months.
A healthy dose of skepticism, scrutiny, critical thinking, and all that, always important. And I think, a good North Star for folks, patience, and just a good solemn meditation. Because, okay, guys, let's all just relax here and with kind of sober, clear eyes, make sure that we're, because that is obviously that the institution's limited resources, making well-informed decisions of things that are actually going to have a positive impact. On the ed tech side, you're not just throwing things and selling or whatever, where it's just like goodwill that you're like burning through or whatever. It's one of those things of benefiting both sides to go that the patient route in whatever way it is necessary. So just really appreciate you for your time, all that you shared, all the great work that you do, of ways to connect with you and GTMppl in the episode description. Super glad that we could connect and have this conversation.
Thank you for having me on, and I enjoyed our conversation as well.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.